Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly, ramble about stuff, books, bookish, booktube, life, etc. There are a lot of really great bookish events going on this month, most of which I'm not participating in, at least not full-throatedly, because, well, at some point I think you got to take a break from all the booktube events going on and just read what you want to read, and to a certain extent, that's what I'm doing. But I am participating in MaybeMidrash, and I've been watching a lot of Midrash videos, which I'm going to mention and talk about in a video I have planned maybe for later this week, in which that's the only topic. But, since I was reading for that project, and what I read this week, finished this week, was How to Practice the Way to a Meaningful Life by the Dalai Lama, I had some thoughts about this, about Midrash and religion and faith. And I thought, I want to share some of those with you today on Saturday. So my Midrash focus was on Buddhism and the concept in Buddhism of freeing yourself kind of the earthly material things. Those are, the things we accumulate in life and possessions, but also, at some point, if Buddhists gain a certain level of wisdom, they can free themselves from obsessive worry even about their family members. Now, this has always been the sticking point with me with Buddhism. I don't see and haven't seen how that's possible. And so one of the things I wanted to look at with my Midrash was this concept of freeing yourself of those things, which in other contexts I'm just going to refer to as lightness. Sometimes in Buddhism it's referred to as that as well, as being light, of being freed from your earthly concerns, perhaps, is the best way to put it, or your everyday concerns. And so I was pairing this book by the Dalai Lama with Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being, which I started reading this week, to try to kind of get some ideas, different concepts of lightness, and how those might affect my view of Buddhism. So I read the Dalai Lama's book. This is a reread for me. I think it's an incredibly good, concise, instructive introduction into Buddhism. Now, I myself don't consider myself a Buddhism. I'll talk more about this later in my Midrash video this week, but just a little bit today. I'm not a person who ascribes to any particular faith or religion, nor am I a person who necessarily excludes the existence of a higher power. And again, I'll talk about this more, but Buddhism has always been really attractive to me as on the whole, what should be a relatively peaceful, almost kind of do-it-yourself, I think, approach for the average person to religious faith and to wisdom and to enlightenment, and all those things sound appealing to me. But this issue of, how do you free yourself from your obsessive worry about your family, your friends, your loved ones in other ways, this has always been then a problem. And so in reading How to Practice this time, I paid attention to those issues. And those of you who are, far more knowledgeable about Buddhism than I already know that the answer is to gain that wisdom, to gain the wisdom where you see how that's possible, where you see how you can love a member of your family and at the same time not be obsessively worried about their safety or about their health or about what might happen to them. And that the way you do that is through meditation and thought and practice, and that those things take time and that those things require an investment. And here then I guess is where my big problem with any kind of organized religion and religious thought comes in general, and that's with the concept of faith. This is undoubtedly a character flaw on my part, but whenever I have attempted to meditate or to, ruminate on religious thinking, to try to put into practice the things that Dalai Lama outlines here, no matter how sincerely I go into it, no matter how much I think this is good and the outcomes would be beneficial, at some point my patience breaks down and I start to question, is this really something I believe? This is really something that's worth it? And there then is the problem. One is I like patience, and one reason why I like patience is because I think I just fundamentally lack faith. Faith in something other than what we can see, feel, touch, experience, directly. I'm not one of those people who necessarily has faith in a system, faith in an individual deity, faith in an individual concept of God or salvation or what, heaven or anything like that would look like. And so, I think that's just a part of the problem with being me and approaching all these kinds of topics. So this then led me to thinking about a lot of discussion, or not a lot, but sometimes discussion on BookTube centers around this issue of people's faith or people's lack of faith or a belief in God or a confidence that God doesn't exist. And I find all those discussions interesting, and I like listening to them, and I think from an intellectual point of view they may serve some purpose, but I think they only serve purpose, or I think the primary purpose they serve, these discussions about the existence of God or religious doctrinal issues that we have with one another, is that they only serve to hone what we already believe, that what we believe becomes sharper. Whether we believe in nothing or we believe in a religious faith, what we believe becomes sharper by being tested and having to think about and perhaps defend our own beliefs. But what concerns me then is, and what I think that a lot of people just don't get or appreciate, and one of the things that frustrates me about these arguments at some point is that at some point it just comes back to that issue of faith. Faith is a belief in something you can't prove. To put it in a more worldly scenario, I believe that my wife is faithful to me. Do I have proof that she is? No. She goes off, she works, she does things outside my presence, and I don't have proof other than the fact that I have faith. I believe it even though I can't see it. I believe it even though I can't know it. And that kind of faith in the hands of a really sincerely religious person is, to me, as beautiful as the faith that we have in relationships, whether they are romantic relationships or friendships. We have faith that the other person is going to do the right thing and is not going to betray us. And in the same way, people have faith in the existence of God. They have faith in the importance of the way in which they practice their religion. They have faith in meditation. They have faith in prayer. They just believe. So to go around trying to disprove people's faith, and I'm not saying that's necessarily what people here on BookTube are doing, but we know people do it. To go around trying to disprove people's faith, to me, is like trying to undermine their belief in their spouse or their friends, and I don't see the point in that. Yes, an intellectual discussion which both sides engage, on equal footing and aren't just out to have a gotcha, kind of moment. Well, you can't prove this, or this is ridiculous, kind of a thing. Outside of that, I think that there can be productivity there, but to a certain extent, I guess in my own life, I'm willing to let you believe whatever you want to believe, and I appreciate it if you allow me the same thing. That was kind of a ramble about faith, and not exactly sure that I ended up where I intended to when I started off. But there we go. This week, also at the beginning of the week, I was a little less active on BookTube at the beginning of the week, all the way through yesterday. Really, I watched fewer videos. I made sure I made my videos in advance and scheduled them because my daughter came home for 3 or 4 days. And it was great having my daughter back at home and having, my family, my wife, my 2 kids here in the house with me together. And I didn't want to take a lot of time away from that, no offense, by watching BookTube videos or filming BookTube videos or even really reading. It suppressed my reading because whatever time we had to spend, I wanted to spend as a family because my daughter just graduated from college and will be married soon, and so the family that my wife and I created is never really going to be back to being the same again. And so in some ways, having my daughter here was like having that puzzle completed, a puzzle you've worked maybe more than once that you just really like the image of and you enjoy working the puzzle even though you've done it before, and it all kind of fits back together and the image it creates is kind of perfect. And I've noticed that as time goes by and as I get to work that puzzle or have that puzzle put together with my family back together all together, that each time I do that, each time we are all just the 4 of us together, at home, that there's more nostalgia attached to it, and I want to savor it and enjoy it more. So I was a little bit off of BookTube and off books. I did complete the Dalai Lama's book. I also read Ursula K. Le Guin's The Lathe of Heaven, which I found to be really interesting. This is only the second book by Le Guin I've read. I read a book of hers in a sci-fi literature class way back in college, which, was a long time ago for me. And I thought, wow, she really is a good writer. She's effective at creating characters and the relationships between them, in creating images, in creating the world she created. She is effective, I think, at creating kind of the science fiction effect that goes on. I can't say that I was a tremendous fan of the book, even though I thought it was very inventive and very well written. There's just something about it that made it difficult for me to go back to, even though I enjoyed it when I did. I had a tendency for a long time to read it in short snatches, 10 pages here, and then yesterday, after my daughter left, I just bore down and I read the last 80 pages, and it was good, but, and this is going to sound terrible and snobby, but one of the things that's true for me with a lot of genre fiction is at some point the structure of the genre gets in the way. The structure of the genre and the almost need to introduce something that's more sci-fi than just the original premise kind of gets in the way. And I don't know if this is original design. I don't know if that's just following the tropes of the genre. I don't know if the author, even if one as skilled and great as Le Guin does, gets to some point and says, okay, well, I'm going to use some kind of sci-fi thing that I just come up with to bring all this to a resolution, but it always strikes me as a little bit hollow, and I did have that experience with The Lathe of Heaven. Now, if you're a science fiction fan and that doesn't bother you, I would highly recommend that. I also then yesterday started rereading The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera, which I mentioned as a part of my MaybeMidrash reading, and this was just really enjoyable. I read the first 100 pages last night in just a few hours, which is fast for me. So that's going well. This time around, I'm probably less impressed with the idea or with the author as I am with enjoying trying to piece it all together, the philosophical puzzle that he's trying to create in the novel. Whether in the end I think that puzzle he creates, or that philosophical pattern he creates, I guess I should say, works or not, remains to be seen. But I am enjoying rereading that book. I have, I think, on my list 3 more books I mentioned I would read. By the way, still reading Catherine Ann Porter's The Jolting of Granny Weatherall for my short story project. That video will be out on the 28th. Also, our Toni Morrison group has picked back up with Tar Baby for this month, so this will probably be the next book I read. And then I do still want to get to The Crossing by Cormac McCarthy to do the second book in the Border trilogy, which, I did a review of All the Pretty Horses. And then the book I really am looking forward to getting to the most is Lakota America, which is essentially a history of the indigenous, of what we would call the Sioux Indians. I'm really looking forward to getting to that book, even though that will be a really dense read, and I probably won't finish it this month. Just BookTube-wise, I just want to make sure I gave a couple of shout-outs to 2 channels. One of which is new to me, and one of which I'm just not sure I've ever shouted out before. So the one that I'm not sure I've ever shouted out before, even though I've tagged him in some videos, is the Rambling Racontuer. Jack over at the Rambling Racontuer. Great channel. Really interesting person who reads broadly and deeply. And if you haven't checked out his channel, please do that. I'll leave a link down in the description box below. And then a new to me channel is Lindsey's Book Life. So I just watched a vlog she did for a reading challenge, I think, called Bout of Books, which I think was published yesterday, and I enjoyed that a lot. And she's got a really cool dog named Mandela, which appears to be a Weimaraner, which is, almost as good as a Great Dane. Isn't that right, Zelda? Anyway, so there you go. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge for what it was worth and for what the ramble it was worth. Look forward to any comments you want to leave me in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.